We are back with another short analysis of some Modern Horizons 3 combo cards and a couple of potentially interesting brews to try out once the set is released. So in the first part, I took a look at cards that I felt could be useful in Ad Nauseam or Spoils or Thassa's Oracle type shells. In the second part, I looked at Storm shells, including Ruby Storm, the new Rawl, things like that. Today, I'm looking at just any sort of other cards, maybe something that could spawn a new archetype, maybe something that can be brewed around, built around, or cards that are just kind of powerful, but I don't necessarily think they have that much of a home yet. So the first thing that jumps out at me when I'm looking at the set for new archetypes is this Kozilek's Unsealing card. So if you read nothing else on this card, the Devoid doesn't matter. The middle line actually kind of does matter, but the main thing that we care about is whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. So as soon as we see draw 3 cards, that should get those wheels turning. And 7 or greater, well, there's a whole category of spells that cost 7 or greater that can be cast potentially for free. So that's going to be like the Mirror Enforcer, the new card here, Frog Mirror Enforcer, the other Sojourner's Companion, 7 mana one, and even the 2 cost or the 2/2 6 and a blue affinity, draw 2 cards that I can't think of the name of right now. Is it would cost 1 with 6 artifacts out, and would, again, in that case, draw 5 cards. So this card has the potential to let you draw your entire deck if you are playing enough free 7 drops. So that's potentially very interesting. I have a deck that builds around this, including, again, the Frogmere Enforcer, and then Ugin's Labyrinth is potentially a very powerful tool to help accelerate something like a Kozilek's Unsealing out. So this card is just an excellent card overall. This could be good for something like Tron, but really the place I'm interested in using it is alongside the 7-cost affinity cards to be a soul land that lets you play Kozilek's Unsealing on turn 2. So that's one potential archetype that I see for brewing with. Another interesting card is Buried Alive. So Buried Alive is definitely a pretty powerful card, putting 3 creatures into the graveyard. This was sort of the driving force behind Legacy Arclight Phoenix when that was a deck for a little bit. You could Dark Ritual Buried Alive, put 3 Arclight Phoenixes in your yard, and if you had one other spell, you were attacking for 9 on that turn. Buried Alive can only search for creature cards, notably, so you need to be a little bit careful with what you're putting into the yard, but this is just a pretty powerful enabler. I mean, if we can dump cards into the graveyard that maybe we then reanimate or something like that, that could be pretty strong. To help with a plan like that, there's also Shifting Woodland. So I think this card is maybe a little bit quietly perhaps one of the best cards in the set. There's very low cost to playing it. It's just a green land. It's tapped ETB unless you control a forest, but if you're playing green, you probably already have forests. So it's a almost always untapped land. With Delirium 2 green, it becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until the end of turn. Activate only Delirium activation clause. So if you can dump cards with strong activated abilities into the yard, perhaps with Buried Alive, then you get to use Shifting Woodland, copy them, and have the activated ability of an expensive card for only 4 mana. Now, if that doesn't scream Gristlebrands to you, I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking, but yeah, this screams Gristlebrand to me. So that's something else I've messed around with a little bit, and I'll show you the build for that in a second. Glaring Fleshraker. This is a potentially very powerful card. So anytime you cast a colorless spell, you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn, and then anytime a colorless creature enters the battlefield, you deal 1 damage to each opponent. So each of those Eldrazi spawns is a colorless creature. So whenever you cast a colorless spell, essentially you get a mana and you deal 1 damage to each opponent. Now Storm would kill for some effect like that in red maybe, or something that didn't trigger just based off of colorless. Now, this card, I did try to brew something out of this, and I didn't really immediately have a clear thought. What I was trying to do was to do something similar to KCI with like Scrap Trawler, and maybe you can sort of loop colorless spells going down the chain, and as you're doing that, you're getting more mana. But there wasn't really a clean sacrifice outlet that I saw. I tried a little bit with like Goblin Bombardment. I do like that Ancient Stirrings gets both Fleshraker and Scrap Trawler, but I didn't really fully see the pieces for this. Now, that's not to say they're not there. I would encourage people to go out and brew with this, either in a pure combo deck, or I think this also has a lot of potential to be pretty interesting in some sort of like semi-combo deck that also can play a fair game. We've got another sort of, this one's pretty popular, and everyone thinks that this is going to be a very, very strong card, the Nadu Winged Wisdom. So it's a bird wizard flying. Creatures have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. So if you're like Shuko or something like that, essentially you draw 2 cards per creature that you have in play. So this is definitely very strong, don't get me wrong. But there's potentially value versions of this. There's potentially all-in combo versions of this. I think this is venturing a little bit too close to full creature combo for it to be something I'm too interested in brewing with personally. But I definitely, have to admit that this has the potential to be a very strong combo card. And if you like these sort of creature combo decks a little bit more, I would highly encourage you to check out the Nadu builds that I'm sure will be coming out. And then finally, I have Deep Analysis here. So Deep Analysis is an old card. So the front side of it is nothing special. For 4 mana, you draw 2 cards, but the flashback 1 in a blue, pay 3 life, draw 2 cards is potentially interesting. This might have a home in something like Dredge. I think this is an interesting card overall, and there are definitely times when Deep Analysis sort of does a job that no other card will do. That being said, I don't really think, or at least I can't think of an immediate home for it, but it's something to remember is now in the format. Doomsday has made good use of this in Legacy alongside Consider. There is the Diamond Lion in Modern, so maybe something can be done with that, although I think that it probably would just be a little bit worse than some other things that can happen. Okay, so that's by no means an exhaustive list, but the main things that I'm hyped about, other than in the Storm and Ad Naus categories, Shifting Woodland and Kozilek's Unsealing. So let's take a look at some of the lists I have for those cards. So first of all, we've got my Shifting Woodlands list. So the clones here are representing Shifting Woodlands because it's 4 mana for a copy of a creature, and now it's a copy of the creature in the graveyard, but, whatever. And then there's the Sorin. So this is the new 1 in a black Sorin. Ultimately, this is a card that is good for like a Neoform style of deck. And if you, so it's a win condition. So you play it on your first main phase. In your post-combat main phase, it'll flip, and then you can use its ability to kill your opponent as long as you have gained enough life. So it's played off of 2 Mox Ambers. So the idea behind what I'm doing here, I called this Modern Ice Station Zebra. So if you're familiar with some more obscure Legacy archetypes, Ice Station Zebra is a slightly older archetype, or sub-archetype of the Tin Fins deck. So Tin Fins is a deck that aims to put Gristlebrand into play using some sort of reanimation, draw a whole bunch of cards off of Gristlebrand, and then chain it into a Tendrils of Agony. Now, Ice Station Zebra is a version of the Tin Fins deck that is a little bit less explosive when it comes to comboing with the Gristlebrand, but it plays the Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, and Vampire Hexmage Marriott Lage package, and then it plays Living Wish as a tutor for essentially either half of the combo. You can tutor for, a creature like your Griselbrand, or you can tutor for one of your lands. So this deck, being a green-black lands plus Griselbrand deck, I called Modern Ice Station Zebra in homage to that. So the idea is that either we are going to, hopefully on turn 2, cast a Buried Alive through the use of Ignoble Hierarch, and then on turn 3, we can copy a Griselbrand that we put in the yard using our shifting woodland, whatever it is, the green land that copies. Now, in order to make sure that we get Delirium, it's pretty easy to end up with a land in play. Buried Alive would be a sorcery. So besides that, actually, hang on. Yeah, I had this Thundering Tanadon as so that you could get enchantment creature, artifact creature, and then Griselbrand as a creature plus land, and sort of have all your bases covered. But with Buried Alive in the yard, I don't think that that's actually going to be that necessary. So this Thundering Tanadon can probably just get cut. So the idea is that, again, we're casting Buried Alive, putting Griselbrand in the yard, and then we are copying it, drawing cards, and then doing the Neobrand sort of combo. Now, if that doesn't quite work, you can potentially put Griselbrand in the yard, and then you have Goryo's Vengeance to get it back after you've cast the Buried Alive next turn. So that's a different way to reanimate if you don't have the land. Now, if you have no Griselbrand, well, so Buried Alive will tutor out a Griselbrand, but you can also try to win with the Urza's Saga plan. So we have Urza's Saga. We have Elvish Reclaimer to tutor out either the copying land or more Urza's Sagas to keep the pressure on. You can also tutor out some sort of flex utility land like a Bajuka Bog. And this list does need another pass to sort of check if there's any other relevant utility lands we might want to be playing. You could maybe think about like a Dryad Arbor or something like that. Although actually, maybe not. You can maybe think about like a one of artifact lands to pump the sagas a little bit more. There's different options. But Reclaimer, again, tutors either like the Saga land or the copy land, or Saga, or like the copy land. Saga can go get Boots, Hope of Girapur. The Mox Ambers are more for once you're comboing with Griselbrand, so I'm not as into that when it comes to what was I saying? Yeah, so I'm not as into tutoring out an Amber, because again, the purpose of them is that you have a Griselbrand and you're going and you're using the 2 Ambers to cast the 2 mana Sorin. This is not 6 mana Sorin, this is the new 2 mana Sorin. The other thing you can get is Underworld Cookbook. So if you have like a Griselbrand in your hand, and this is why we're playing 4 Griselbrands, but you don't have like a Buried Alive, then you can Saga out Underworld Cookbook and then use that to discard your Griselbrand as an alternate way of getting Griselbrand into the yard. I think this list could still use a little bit of tweaking. I think maybe there's an argument to be made for Endurance, an Endurance or 2 to sort of loop if you have to, but the green count is maybe not high enough for that, so I'm not 100% sure. I thought about like whether we can actually just go in with Children of Corliss. I thought about whether this could potentially use the new Necropotence or Necrodominance. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that can be played with here. But again, this is a rough draft, a starting point, and something that would certainly change in the future. But I think it is a sort of cool combo of like a Reanimator Saga deck that, has multiple different plans. And finally, the thing that I think I'm most excited about for MH3 as far as like brand new combos is what I'm calling this like Unsealing combo. So the Colossal Dreadmaws are representing the Kozilek's Unsealing. So, again, this is whenever you cast a spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. When you cast a spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, create 2 Eldrazi spawns. So, the idea here... Oh, and then Ancient Tomb is the Ugin's Labyrinth, so it's a soul land. So the idea is that Beseech the Mirror plus copies of the Kozilek's Unsealing give us a decent number of ways to get Kozilek's Unsealing, and then basically everything else in the deck is an artifact. So our goal is to play cheap artifacts like Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Springleaf Drum, whatever, in order to put as many artifacts on the table as we can so that we can make our Mirror Enforcers, Sojourner's Companions. I have 8 Sojourner's Companions here to represent the 4 Frogmere Enforcers as well. So to make all of our Mirror guys as cheap as possible. So once we get enough artifacts down, hopefully on maybe on turn 2 or maybe on turn 3 or turn 4 if we're a little bit slow, we can cast the Kozilek's Unsealing. And then we start casting free 7-drops that draw cards. So each 7-drop is going to draw cards. We hopefully draw through our deck this way. And along the way, you can also play Frogmite. So Frogmite will not draw you cards. However, it will create 2 Eldrazi spawns, which will net you 2 colorless mana. So this represents a total of 8 colorless mana. This colorless mana can be either used to play Springleaf Drum to get colored mana, or to play Star or Sphere to get some colored mana. And then in the end, that's how you play your Thought Monitors, and that's also how you play your Hammer of Perforos, which gives all your creatures haste, and then you can make one gigantic attack with a whole bunch of hasty 4/4s. So that's the idea behind this combo. We're playing a whole bunch of artifact lands because, again, we really do need to be hitting a high artifact count. Underworld Cookbook is in here as an interesting saga tutor target. So, we can discard like extra Beseeches or Kozilek's Unsealings if we are a little bit short on artifact count. Hope of Girapur, protection against counter magic. Lava Spur, because this deck does have the ability to just win with sort of like a fair affinity beatdown plan, even if we don't end up successfully going for the combo. So I'm definitely interested in something like this. I think this deck could potentially play like Paradoxical Outcome, but I think that's potentially a little bit win more. I would like to fit in pacts if we could. I'd like the 4th Thought Monitor. I've looked at other like sort of flex utility saga targets, and then if we needed more 7-drops, there is Barricade Breaker, although that would not be able to win with Hammer of Perforos because it would require Improvise. Now this deck could also play other win cons. You could play like a Thassa's Oracle or something like that, but I tried to choose something that was an artifact so that it could be cast earlier and contribute to the artifact count for the affinity if needed. Our artifact lands are obviously blue-black as much as possible in order to be able to cast either Beseech or the Kozilek's Unsealing, but then red is our 3rd color because Hammer is red, and also the Frogmere can be cast for 3 and a red instead if we need to play it early on in order to just get another artifact on the table. So this is a list I'm definitely very interested in trying out and continuing to tweak a little bit more. Okay, so if you enjoyed all of that, if you're interested in brewing some new combo decks in Modern Horizons 3, let me know if you have any other ideas or anything else that you, maybe a card that I missed. I'm sure there are. But other than that, I'm looking forward to Modern Horizons 3. This will be the end of our series on combo cards for MH3. Again, I know I didn't cover everything. There's a wide variety of decks out there. I just tried to stick to, sort of my favorites, what I know, what I prefer, and go from there. All right. So next up will be some sort of league, maybe Legacy, although I'm not 100% sure that might be Modern. And then we're just creeping closer to MH3, and we'll be playing all these brews before you know it. All right, stay tuned, and until next time, bye everyone.